So I want to start today's deep dive by taking you on a little mental time travel.
Oh, okay. Where are we going?
We're going back to the 2nd century AD,
Right?
to ancient Greece.
Mm.
So you're walking into a temple, let's see, the Temple of Athena on the Acropolis.
Setting the scene. I like it.
Yeah, so it's cool. There's these massive stone walls. The smell of incense is really heavy in the air. And right in the center of this room, there's a golden lantern.
A beautiful image, and actually, for the time, a very technologically advanced object.
Right, but this isn't just about the gold. This lantern was famous. It was basically legendary.
That's because of the flame.
Exactly. The flame inside it burned for an entire year. And sure, the priest would refill the oil, but here is the impossible part. The part that made people whisper about the gods.
The wick.
The wick was never consumed.
It never burned down.
Wow.
It never turned to ash. It just sat there completely bathed in fire, totally untouched.
Right. And the Greeks looked at this wick and they didn't see technology. They saw magic.
They assumed they had discovered some kind of supernatural substance.
Yeah. And linguistically, they kind of nailed it.
They did. They named it asbestos, which translates literally from the Greek to inextinguishable.
Inextinguishable. I mean, it sounds like a superpower.
It really does.
But here's the reality check, and this is where our story today really starts. They hadn't found magic.
No.
They hadn't invented some high-tech synthetic polymer. They literally just went for a walk in the hills and found a rock.
A rock. A very strange, fluffy, fiber-like rock.
And that magic rock is the subject of our deep dive today. We are unpacking the history, the chemistry, and the honestly terrifying biology of asbestos.
It is a dark story.
Because, and I think this is the hook for me, at least we have this narrative in our heads, that asbestos is a solved problem.
Right.
You know, it's that stuff in your grandmother's attic, or it's something guys in the 1970s worried about.
Yeah.
You just think it's gone.
And that is a very dangerous misconception.
Yeah?
In fact, I'd argue it's probably one of the most dangerous myths in modern public health. Wow.
To give you a sense of the scale here, let's look at a modern tragedy that everyone knows. The September 11th attacks.
Okay. We all remember the towers falling. The immediate loss of life was just staggering.
It was. But there is a statistic that usually gets left out of the anniversary memorials. When those towers fell, they pulverized hundreds of tons of asbestos that had been used in the construction of the buildings.
Right.
That dust coated all of lower Manhattan. And the diseases linked to that dust, specifically the cancers caused by asbestos, have now killed more than twice as many people as the attacks themselves.
Wait, hold on. Twice as many.
Twice as many.
That is, I don't even have a word for that.
And that number is still climbing every single year.
It's like a slow motion catastrophe.
Exactly. And if we zoom out to the global picture, the World Health Organization projections are even bleaker. It is estimated that by 2035, nearly 2.8 million people worldwide might die because of exposure to this material.
2.8 million.
So our mission today is to bridge that gap. How do we go from a magic golden lantern in Greece to 2.8 million projected deaths?
We have a lot of ground to cover.
We do. We have a massive stack of sources here, ranging from ancient history to modern electron microscopy reports, and even some really disturbing internal corporate documents that basically read like a crime novel.
We're going to find out why this rock is so indestructible, why it kills us, and the really big question, why is it still here?
Because, spoiler alert, it is not actually banned in the way you probably think it is.
Not at all.
So we're going to get into the chemistry, the biology, and the massive industrial conspiracy that kept the truth hidden for decades. But let's start with the magic. Let's unwrap the chemistry first.
Okay, let's do it.
Because you said it's a rock, but the Greeks were spinning it into wicks. How do you spin a rock?
It defies intuition, doesn't it?
Totally.
If you were to walk past a raw deposit of asbestos in a mine, you'd want to reach out and touch it. It looks like cotton candy or raw silk, just fluff.
But it's a mineral.
It is a naturally occurring mineral. The secret lies in its atomic architecture. You have to zoom all the way down to the basic building block, the silica tetrahedron.
The silica tetrahedron. I mean, that sounds like a spaceship from a sci-fi movie. What does that actually look like?
Visualize a pyramid.
Okay.
In the very center of that pyramid, you have a silicon atom.
Got it.
Surrounding it, at the four corners of the pyramid, are oxygen atoms. Now here is where the chemistry gets interesting. Oxygen is what we call highly electronegative.
Okay, let's unpack electronegative. What does that mean for the listener?
Think of oxygen as an electron hoarder.
Okay.
It's greedy. It pulls the electrons from the silicon atom tightly toward itself. This creates a very strong electrostatic attraction, a really tight bond. It's like a magnet that just won't let go.
So it's a very stable relationship.
Extremely stable. But it goes further. Those oxygen atoms at the corners, they are still looking to complete their outer electron shells.
Right.
So they link up with other silicon atoms to form more tetrahedra. They start clicking together like Lego bricks.
Oh, so they build a structure.
They build a massive repetitive structure, either chains or sheets, where every single atom is locked down tight.
No loose ends.
Exactly. There are no loose ends. And this is the key to why it doesn't burn.
Because fire is just a chemical reaction.
Right. Fire is rapid oxidation. It's oxygen from the air trying to react with a fuel source. But in asbestos, the atoms are already so tightly bound to the oxygen within their own structure that they have no interest in reacting with the oxygen in the fire.
They're full.
They are chemically full, yes.
It's like, okay, imagine a guy at a buffet who has already eaten 5 plates of food. He is stuffed.
Right.
You walk up and offer him a steak, and he just waves it away. He literally cannot take another bite.
That is a surprisingly accurate analogy. The rock is chemically satiated. It's stable up to around 600 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
But here is where we need to make a distinction that most people miss. Not all asbestos is the same. There are really 2 main families, and they look and behave differently.
I feel like this is a detail that gets lost in the public conversation. I always just thought asbestos was asbestos.
No, the geology is very distinct. First, you have the serpentines.
Serpentines.
The most common one here is chrysotile, or white asbestos. In this family, the silica tetrahedra form sheets.
Okay.
But here's the trick. There is a magnesium layer attached to the silica sheet, and the 2 layers don't fit perfectly together.
Like a mismatch.
Right. Think of it like trying to glue a piece of paper to a piece of rubber that is slightly stretched.
Oh, okay.
The tension causes the whole sheet to curl up.
Like a scroll.
Exactly like a scroll, they form these tiny scroll-like tubes, and this makes the fibers soft and flexible.
So this is the stuff that looks like cotton.
This is it. You can spin it, you can weave it, you can make fabric out of it, and this accounts for about 95% of the asbestos ever used commercially.
Okay, so that's the white, fluffy stuff. What's the other family?
The amphiboles. These are the nasty ones.
The bad guys.
Very bad. In this structure, the silica tetrahedra lock into rigid, ladder-like chains. They don't curl, they are straight, stiff, and needle-like.
And I'm guessing that shape matters a lot when we talk about breathing it in later.
It matters immensely.
Right.
Within the amphiboles, you have different types based on what metals are binding the chains. You have amosite, which is brown asbestos.
Okay.
It has iron and magnesium, and it looks like wood splinters. Hard, very heat-resistant. Then you have chrysotile, or blue asbestos.
Blue asbestos. That actually sounds kind of exotic.
It's incredibly dangerous. It uses sodium and iron to bind the chains. It forms these very fine, flexible fibers that are as strong as high-grade steel wire.
Wait, hold on. You're saying this rock fiber is as strong as steel wire?
Stronger by weight.
That's insane.
Imagine a wire that is thinner than a human hair but has the tensile strength of steel. That is what chrysotile is. And that physical property, that sheer strength, is part of what makes it so deadly when it gets into the body.
So we have these rocks that can be woven like wool, but are stronger than steel and are basically proof against fire. I can see why the industrial world went completely crazy for this stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't just a curiosity. It was a solution to a massive problem.
It was the ultimate solution for a world that was suddenly building everything out of steam and steel. And it wasn't just that it didn't burn, it was a perfect insulator.
Right.
When you weave these fibers, you create a tangled mess that traps air pockets. Heat struggles to travel through it because it has to jump from fiber to fiber.
And that brings us to the boom. We have to talk about the 1800s because this is where the story shifts from ancient curiosity to industrial necessity.
Context is key here. Between 1790 and 1870, America was urbanizing at a breakneck speed. Cities were becoming these dense, packed environments.
Right.
But what were the buildings made of?
Wood. Mostly wood.
Wood, and how were people lighting and heating these wooden boxes?
Open flames, candles, coal, oil lamps.
It was a literal recipe for disaster. We talk about the Great Fire of New York in 1835. They called it an ocean of fire. 700 buildings were destroyed in a single night.
Wow.
And this wasn't unique to New York. Chicago, London, Tokyo, they all burned. The issue wasn't just the initial fire, it was the embers.
The flying debris.
Right, you'd have a fire in one building, the wind would pick up burning shingles or wood, land it on a neighbor's wooden roof 3 blocks away, and suddenly the whole district goes up.
So the world was desperate for a fireproof roof.
Enter Henry Ward Johns.
Our first major character.
In 1858, he is a 21-year-old inventor with a mission. He wants to stop these fires. He knows about asbestos, but at the time, industry only wanted the long, silky fibers for weaving textiles.
Right.
The short, dusty stuff was just considered trash.
One man's trash is another man's empire.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Johns is living in a basement apartment in New York. He takes a tea kettle, his own kitchen tea kettle, and fills it with tar.
Classic basement science.
He mixes in these short asbestos scraps that nobody wanted. He cooks it up into a sticky black goo. Then, and I love this detail because it's so tactile, he runs the sticky mess through his wife's clothes wringer.
Oh, man. I'm sure she was thrilled about that. Like, honey, why is the laundry machine covered in toxic tar?
Probably not his best husband moment, no. But it worked. He created a roofing felt that wouldn't burn.
And that changed everything.
That experiment in the basement launched the Johns Manville Company. By 1927, they were generating $45 million in sales.
That is massive money for 1927.
Huge. And consumption just kept climbing. In the U.S. alone, it peaked at 803,000 tons in 1973.
803,000 tons just in the U.S.
It wasn't just in roofs anymore. It was in brake pads because it could handle the friction heat. It was in toasters and hairdryers. Brewers used it to filter beer. It was in surgical dressings.
It's actually hard to wrap your head around how ubiquitous it was. It was in the walls, the floors, the appliances. And pop culture really embraced it, too.
Yeah.
I was completely shocked when I saw the source notes about The Wizard of Oz.
The poppy field scene.
Yeah, Dorothy falls asleep in the poppies, and Glinda the Good Witch makes it snow to wake her up.
That snow was 100% pure industrial chrysotile asbestos.
They were literally showering the actors, Judy Garland included, in carcinogens.
It looked great on camera because it didn't melt under the hot studio lights, and it floated just like real snow. And they reused it. They swept it up off the floor and dropped it again.
That is so dark. And then you have the comic books. Marvel had a villain called the Asbestos Lady.
Yes. Her superpower was basically just wearing a suit of asbestos. She could rob banks and then set fires to escape because the police couldn't follow her through the flames.
It perfectly reflected the public perception at the time. Asbestos was the ultimate shield. It was safety. It was the hero material.
But the most jaw-dropping example of this safety paradox has to be the cigarettes.
Oh, the Kent Micronite filter.
The thinking man's filter.
Yeah, the marketing was wild. In the 1950s, people were just starting to get worried about smoking. So Kent marketed this high-tech blue filter.
Micronite. I mean, it sounds scientific, doesn't it? Like something from the space program.
It does.
In reality, it was made of chrysotile, that blue asbestos we talked about earlier. The one with fibers as strong as steel wire.
So, just so I have this right for anyone listening, people were smoking tobacco, which is already bad, and pulling the smoke through a filter made of needle-like rocks.
Effectively, they were mainlining mineral shards directly into their lungs. The marketing claimed it filtered out the tar, but in reality, as you smoked, you were inhaling microscopic bits of the filter itself.
Wow.
It's arguably one of the most dangerous consumer products ever sold in history.
And this is where the magic really starts to fade and the biological horror sets in. Because while everyone was celebrating this fireproof miracle, the people working with it were dying.
Yeah.
And not just dying, they were suffocating.
Let's talk about patient zero, Nellie Kershaw.
Okay.
She was a factory worker in Rochdale, England in the 1920s. She spun asbestos thread for a living. She died in 1924.
How old was she?
She was 33.
33 years old. That is incredibly young to die of lung failure.
And she had been sick for years before that. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. When she died, a pathologist named Dr. William Cook performed an autopsy.
And what he found changed everything.
Her lungs weren't pink and spongy like a healthy lung. They were gray, almost blue-black. And here's the detail from the source that really sticks with me. When he tried to cut into the lung tissue with his scalpel, he described a sensation of rasping.
Like cutting through sandpaper.
Exactly. The lungs were full of mineral grit. He defined this condition as asbestosis. It's a scarring of the lungs caused by the physical presence of these fibers.
I want to get into the mechanics of this. What actually happens when you breathe this in? Because our lungs have defenses, right? We breathe in dust all the time. I breathe in city dust, pollen, dirt. Why doesn't that kill me?
It comes down to the macrophage.
The immune system cell.
Right. Think of the macrophage as the Pac-Man of your immune system.
Okay, I can picture that.
Its job is to patrol the alveolar sacs, the deep, deep parts of the lung, and find foreign particles, bacteria, dust, pollen. It engulfs them. digests them with acid, and clears them out. It's a garbage collector.
So Pac-Man eats the ghost. Simple enough.
But an asbestos fiber, especially those amphibole needles, is different. It's long, it's sharp, and remember the chemistry?
It's chemically indestructible.
Exactly. The acid inside the cell can't dissolve it.
So the macrophage tries to eat it.
And it fails, but it fails in a very specific, horrific way. The fiber is often longer than the cell itself, so the macrophage tries to stretch over it. It's like you trying to swallow a toothpick sideways.
Oh man, that is a visceral image.
The biology calls it frustrated phagocytosis.
Frustrated phagocytosis.
The cell is literally frustrated. It stretches until it ruptures. It dies. And in the process, it spills all those digestive acids and inflammatory chemicals onto the surrounding lung tissue.
It burns the lung.
It burns the lung. And this signals more macrophages to come in and help. They try to eat the fiber, they get impaled or frustrated, they die, and they spill more acid.
It's a chain reaction.
It becomes a cycle of chronic inflammation. The lung tries to heal the damage by building scar tissue, that's fibrosis. The lung gets stiff. You literally can't take a deep breath anymore. You slowly suffocate.
And that's just the scarring. That's not even the cancer.
Correct. The cancer, mesothelioma, is even more insidious. These fibers are so sharp and so thin that they can migrate.
They move around.
They pierce through the lung tissue, enter the lymphatic system, and travel. But one of the most common destinations is the pleura, the thin lining that wraps the outside of the lungs and the inside of the chest wall.
So they get stuck between the lung and the ribs.
Exactly. They get lodged in that outer wrapper. And every time you take a breath, your lungs expand and contract. Those fibers scratch and irritate the cells there constantly.
For decades.
For decades. Eventually, that chronic inflammation causes the cells to mutate, and you get a cancer that is almost exclusively caused by asbestos.
The timeline here is what's crazy to me. Nellie Kershaw died in the 1920s. We knew about asbestosis. Why did it take until the 1960s or 70s for the public to really get the memo?
Because of a combination of the latency period, it takes 20 to 40 years to get sick, and a very concerted effort to hide the data.
The cover-up.
But before we get to the cover-up, we have to mention Dr. Irving Selikoff. He's the detective in this story.
The one who connected the dots in the shipyards.
Yes. In the 1960s, Selikoff had a problem. He was seeing sick workers, but the companies wouldn't give him their employment records. He needed to prove that the job was killing them. So he utilized a brilliant workaround.
He used World War II Navy records.
Because the Navy kept track of everyone who worked on a ship.
Smart.
Very. He tracked down Union workers who had insulated the warships. The statistics he found were damning. 14 out of every 1,000 workers died of asbestos cancer.
How does that compare to combat?
It was higher than the death rate of soldiers in combat during the war.
That is unbelievable.
Being an insulator was statistically more dangerous than fighting in the trenches. In 1964, Selikoff presented this data at a conference in New York. That was the turning point. The miracle was officially dead. The public health crisis had begun.
And here's the rage-inducing part of the deep dive. The industry knew. They knew way before Selikoff.
Oh, decades before. This brings us to the Sumner-Simpson papers. This is the Watergate of the asbestos industry.
Who was Sumner Simpson?
He was the president of Asbestos Manhattan, a major player. In the 1970s, during a lawsuit, a box of his old documents was discovered in a storage closet.
And what was in it?
Inside was correspondence from 1935, 30 years before Selikoff's conference.
1935. What did the letter say?
Simpson was writing to Vannevar Brown, the attorney for Johns Manville. They were discussing articles about asbestosis that were appearing in British medical journals. Simpson wrote, and I quote, "I think the less said about asbestos, the better off we are."
The less said, the better. They were actively colluding to keep it quiet.
It gets darker, Brown replied, agreeing that their interests were best served by having asbestosis receive the minimum of publicity. And they put their money where their mouth was. They funded animal studies at Saranac laboratories in the 30s and 40s.
I mean, that sounds responsible, actually, doing the science.
It would be, if they hadn't rigged the game. The contract for the research had a clause: the companies owned the results. They, and only they, could determine what was published.
So if the results were bad?
They buried them. When the lead researcher found cancer in the mice, the companies took the report, edited out the references to cancer, and locked the original data away. They deleted the science.
There is also that testimony you mentioned in the notes, the save money comment. This one really stuck with me.
Yes. A witness recalled a meeting where an executive was asked why they didn't warn the workers during their physicals. Why didn't they tell them, hey, your x-ray looks bad, you should stop working?
And what did he say?
The executive allegedly replied that they let them work until they dropped dead because, quote, we save a lot of money that way.
There's just calculated cruelty. It's treating human beings like disposable parts of the machine.
It's the calculus of profit over life. And even when the lawsuits finally started flooding in during the 70s and 80s, the industry had one last trick.
The bankruptcy strategy.
Exactly. In 1982, Johns Manville filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, usually, you file bankruptcy because you were broke. Johns Manville was a hugely profitable giant.
So why do it?
They did it to freeze the lawsuits. It allowed them to restructure, set up a trust to pay pennies on the dollar to victims and survive. The company still exists today. They just don't make asbestos anymore.
So we have the chemistry, the biology, and the cover-up.
Right.
Eventually, the government steps in, the EPA tries to ban it.
Yeah.
And I think if you ask the average person on the street, is asbestos illegal? They would say, yes, absolutely.
And they would be wrong.
Yeah?
This is the asbestos paradox.
Explain the ban that never happened.
In 1989, the EPA issued a final rule banning almost all asbestos. They had the science, they had the death tolls. It looked like a done deal. But the industry sued immediately. The case was corrosion-proof fittings versus EPA. And in 1991, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned the ban.
How? How do you overturn a ban on something that kills thousands of people?
A legal technicality regarding the Toxic Substances Control Act. The court ruled that the EPA had to prove that an outright ban was the only solution and the least burdensome method to the industry.
Least burdensome.
Right. The court decided the EPA hadn't done enough economic analysis to prove that just labeling it or restricting it wouldn't work. The bar was set so high that the ban collapsed.
So asbestos remained legal.
For the most part, yes. It was still used in gaskets, roofing, friction products. In fact, the chlor-alkali industry, which makes chlorine for water treatment, still uses huge amounts of asbestos diaphragms to this day.
But it's not just about the uses, it's about the definition, right? This part really blew my mind. We think asbestos is a scientific term, but you're saying it's a legal bucket.
Exactly. Legally, asbestos is defined as 6 specific minerals, chrysotile, and 5 types of amphiboles. That's it. If a mineral has the exact same chemical composition but a slightly different crystal shape, it is not asbestos.
Wait, but does the lung know the difference?
No, the lung just sees a fiber, but the law sees a loophole. There is also the issue of cleavage fragments.
Which sounds like, well, never mind what it sounds like. What is it?
It refers to when a rock breaks. The industry argues that if a mineral doesn't grow as a fiber but breaks into a shard that looks like a fiber, it shouldn't count. They call them cleavage fragments.
Even if it pierces the cell just the same.
Even if it kills the macrophage just the same. And then there is the Grace rule. This comes from W.R. Grace, the company we'll talk about in a minute. They successfully lobbied for a threshold. If a product contains less than 1% asbestos, it is not regulated as an asbestos-containing material.
1%? That sounds really small.
It sounds negligible, but think about a 20-pound bag of loose-fill insulation. 1% of that is a huge amount of material. It is millions upon millions of breathable fibers, enough to contaminate a home, enough to kill. But legally, that bag is asbestos-free.
This leads us directly to Libby, Montana, because W.R. Grace is central to that story.
Libby is the worst-case scenario. W.R. Grace operated a mine there extracting vermiculite. Vermiculite is a great mineral. It expands when heated. It's used in soil, insulation, fireproofing. The problem was the mountain in Libby was also full of amphibole asbestos. You couldn't mine the vermiculite without digging up the asbestos.
And they knew it was contaminated.
They knew, but they processed it anyway. The town was dusted in it. It wasn't just the miners. It was their wives washing their clothes. It was the kids playing in the piles of waste rock near the baseball fields. 200 deaths in a town of 3,000 people.
And that vermiculite didn't stay in Libby.
No. It was shipped all over the country. It's in the attic insulation of millions of American homes. If you have zonulite insulation, that's Libby vermiculite.
That is terrifying. But let's move to a more recent failure, 9/11. You mentioned earlier that the death toll from the dust is surpassing the attack itself. I remember the news saying the air was safe. Christine Todd Whitman, the head of the EPA, came out and said it.
The air is safe to breathe. She did. And this brings us back to testing methods. This is technical, but it is life and death important. It's the difference between looking with a magnifying glass and looking with a telescope.
Break it down for us.
The EPA used a method called PLM polarized light microscopy. It uses visible light. It's cheap. It's fast. But it has a limit. It can't see very thin fibers. The wavelength of light is simply too big to resolve them.
But the World Trade Center dust? The building was completely pulverized.
Exactly. The force of the collapse turned the asbestos into dust so fine it was invisible to PLM. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack while wearing foggy glasses. There is a better test called TEM transmission electron microscopy.
What's the difference?
PLM magnifies about 1,000 times. TEM magnifies up to 1,000,000 times. It shoots a beam of electrons through the sample. It can literally see the atomic structure.
So what happened when they used TEM?
Independent researchers used TEM on the 9/11 dust and found it was loaded with dangerous levels of asbestos. But the EPA stuck to their PLM results and declared the air safe.
So the first responders, the residents, the cleanup crews, they were walking into a toxic cloud because the government used the wrong microscope.
Essentially, yes. They relied on a regulatory standard that wasn't built for a catastrophe of that magnitude. And we are seeing the results of that decision right now in the cancer wards.
It makes you wonder where else we are missing it. And according to our sources, the answer is everywhere. Let's talk about consumer goods. Let's talk about makeup.
The Claire's investigation, this was shocking. In 2017, a researcher named Christy Warner, who actually worked in a law firm dealing with asbestos, got curious about her daughter's makeup kit from the store Claire's.
Glittery stuff for little girls.
Right. She tested it. It was positive for tremolate asbestos.
In makeup. Why?
Because of talc. Talc is the softest mineral on Earth. We use it in baby powder, makeup, crayons. But geologically, talc and asbestos form in the same metamorphic conditions. They are often neighbors in the ground. If you mine talc without rigorous testing, you get asbestos with it.
And she found it in other things, too.
Cell phone cases, Just For You kits, even Mickey Mouse branded crayons.
Mickey Mouse crayons.
Yeah.
That is just, it's insidious.
It is. And recently, we saw schools in Australia closing because asbestos was found in the sandbox.
I noticed in the notes there was a mention about media coverage on that.
Yeah, this is interesting. Ground News did an analysis and found that the story about asbestos in Australian schools was covered significantly less by right-leaning news sources. It highlights how public health info can get trapped in echo chambers.
And we definitely want to take sides here, but it's a huge problem when we are talking about something that can kill you. It shouldn't be political.
It absolutely shouldn't be. The fiber doesn't care who you voted for.
Okay, we've covered the industrial stuff, we've covered the home, but there is one last frontier that I think is the most surprising. Naturally occurring asbestos. We talked about the Greeks finding it in the ground. It's still in the ground.
It is. And people forget this. They think asbestos comes from a factory. But if you live in Nevada, near Las Vegas, you are living near massive natural deposits.
The source material described a road trip to Las Vegas. Researchers Brenda Buck and Rod Metcalf found asbestos spread across 1 million acres.
And they tried to warn people. They tried to present their findings, and they got cease and desist letters. They were followed by state officials.
Why?
Because Las Vegas is built on tourism and development. If you tell the world, hey, the dust around our city is toxic, that's bad for business.
The Veritasium video did an experiment there. They drove a dune buggy around the desert to see if they would kick up asbestos.
This was a great piece of science journalism. They drove the buggy, collecting air samples. But there was a twist. It had rained that morning.
So no dust.
The air samples came back clean. The host was relieved. But then the scientists said, wait, let's test the mud on your tires.
And what did they find?
In just 1 gram of mud, they found 30 to 50 million asbestos structures.
50 million in a spoonful of dirt.
If it hadn't rained, they would have been breathing that cloud. And people go there every weekend to drive, camp, take wedding photos. There are no warning signs.
It's just open desert.
It's a geological hazard that we are just ignoring.
So we have reached the end of the evidence for this deep dive, and I feel unsettled. We started with a magic lantern, and we've ended up with 50 million fibers in a gram of mud and a ban that isn't really a ban.
It is unsettling. The asbestos paradox is that we treat it like a solved problem. We think of it like lead paint or smallpox, something we defeated. But the reality is, as of 2024, the U.S. has only banned chrysotile, the other 5 types.
Oh.
Still legal to import if you jump through the right regulatory hoops.
And we're still importing it.
The U.S. imports have dropped, but globally. India imports 350,000 tons a year. Russia is actively mining it. The legacy is still being built.
And for those of us in older homes or with kids in older schools,
it's decaying behind the walls. As it ages, it becomes more friable, more likely to crumble into dust.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? What is the takeaway?
It means skepticism is a survival skill. We trusted the industry when they said it was safe. We trusted the testing after 9/11. We trust the 1% label on products. But the science tells us that biology doesn't care about our legal definitions or our profit margins.
It connects back to the tobacco analogy. Scientists once said tobacco was safe too.
And just like tobacco, the latency period is the killer. You don't know you are sick for 20, 30, 40 years. The exposure you have today from that renovation you're doing or that makeup or that dust in the desert is a debt that comes due decades later.
That is a very heavy thought.
It raises a final question for everyone to mull over. If the definitions of asbestos are legal rather than medical, and our testing methods like PLM are outdated, what else are we currently calling safe simply because we aren't looking closely enough?
Something to definitely think about the next time you see a dust-free label or start a DIY project. Assume it's there. Don't trust the 1%.
Stay curious and stay safe.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.